All right, call to order this meeting of the Finance Committee. Are there any public comments on tonight's agenda?
Currently none at this time.
All right, seeing none, turn it over to Mr. Digit.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Tonight we have 4 items on the agenda. First order of business is a refinance of our 2017 general obligation bonds. This is an exercise in which we've done in the past. Essentially, we are looking to harvest some savings on our interest expense by basically taking existing debt, refinancing that. We are not adding new principal. We are not incurring new debt. We are just looking to capture a more beneficial rate. If the committee recalls, we did this last year with one of our general obligation bonds, and our teams from PFM and Raymond James, we're always looking at them or working with them to harvest any potential savings. So, like I said, we're looking to refinance our 2017 general obligation bonds. Expected savings, right now, if we were to go out the market today, would be north of about $670,000 in interest expense. Those will be savings that will be realized in either the 24-25 budget or the 25-26 budget. That'll be a part of the ongoing conversation we have. But to go through some more of the details, I want to invite Lou Berdelli from Raymond James and Garrett Moore from PFM up to our podium here to go over some of the broader points.
Great. And I did bring hard copies of the presentation. I don't know if folks have it in front of them or would like hard copies. Perfect. Thank you. Before we dig into the presentation, I think between Lou and I, this is our first time in this new building. So again, we got a little bit of the grand tour as we were coming in, but truly a really, really nice building. And it's always nice, at least from our end, as we work with districts, throughout the financing to finally see the culmination and frankly get to walk through it. So congratulations. As Mark had said, this is basically a copy and paste from what we did earlier in the year as far as a refinancing goes. So earlier in the year, we refinanced the district series of 2018 bonds, locked in about $670,000 of savings. What we're planning on doing here this evening and later in the year this year is a copy and paste virtually. So as I mentioned earlier in the year, we refinanced the district series of 2018 bonds. In this particular case, we'd be looking to refinance the district series of 2017 bonds. So if you're looking on page 2, the 17 bonds have just shy of $14 million outstanding. It has a final maturity in 2039, an average rate on those bonds of about 5%. And more importantly, if you might recall, a call date of February 15th, 2025. And as you might recall, that call date is the earliest date in which we could refinance the bond. So that's why we're here this evening, to get the ball rolling so that we would be in a position to effectuate the refinancing at the earliest possible date. As Mark had mentioned, we'll get into the numbers a little bit, but we're looking at realizing about $600,000 of savings. Currently, we have it structured to occur in the 24-25 year. However, in speaking with Mark, there might be an appetite to push that back a year and have the savings realized in 25-26. Again, we don't need to make that decision tonight, but rather we just wanted to show you kind of a magnitude of what the savings might be, regardless of whether it's this year or next year. Also in our handout in the back, and again, like last time, is this notion of a maximum parameters schedule or a maximum parameters resolution. Now you'll note in the back, the maximum schedule is for $16 million, but we're really only looking to refinance about $13.9 million of bonds. As Mark had mentioned, we're not going out to issue more debt, but rather the notion of a parameters resolution, as you might recall, is to really set the framework of the parameters in which we, the financing team, need to work within in order to effectuate a transaction. So just going back a little bit in time, prior to parameters resolutions becoming vogue, we had to time the bond pricing with one of your meeting dates so that we would then price the bonds, come in for you guys ultimately to authorize them. As you might suspect, having to time a bond pricing with a meeting date, you're kind of locked into 1 or 2 days a month. So if the market's looking pretty sloppy or choppy, one of those days we might have to wait a month. So this just gives us, as the financing team, the maximum flexibility to price the bonds at the most opportune time, lock in those savings, and kind of already have all the pre-approvals in place for us to do so. So again, even though the parameters schedule has a maximum amount of $16 million and a maximum interest rate of 5.5%, we do not expect to issue that much debt, and we certainly don't expect to have a 5.5% interest rate, but rather those are the constraints we need to work within to effectuate the transaction. And again, this isn't us then going rogue. This is ultimately, we're in constant communication with Mark, telling him what the market looks like, and ultimately he and council president or board president would ultimately need to sign off on any pricing that occurs. So this isn't, the parameters resolution isn't the final, shot at or final review from you all. Jumping to page 3, again, as you have probably seen watching CNBC and things of that nature, the market's been relatively choppy. However, taking again a more holistic approach or view, interest rates are still relatively attractive when you look at a 30-year kind of index or a 30-year look back. One of the things I think is important to realize is, you're probably seeing mortgage rates and things like that being 6.5%, 7.5%. Being a school district and a tax-exempt entity like yourselves, you're able to issue tax-exempt debt, which means you're not paying 6.5%, 7.5%. You're paying something more like 4.5%. And again, being a AAA issuer, that means you're the best of the best credit, so you're going to get the best of the best interest rates on any given day. So again, market, while be it a little volatile lately, but still historically speaking, very attractive. And when we get to the timeline on the later slides, our goal ultimately is to price the bonds and lock in the interest rate before the presidential election. We want to stay clear of any sort of volatility, whether it be positive or negative, around the election time. So we want to get in, get our rates locked in, get our savings locked in before any of that mess starts. Page 4, again, is just the summary of the district's outstanding debt. We have a little box drawn around the series of 2017 bonds. Again, those are the bonds we're looking to refinance for savings. We're not looking to extend the final maturity or do anything like that. It's simply a high to low refunding, similar to refinancing a home mortgage, and in doing so, generate savings. Page 5 are estimated numbers. Again, if we were able to go to the market and price bonds today, we think the savings would be about $670,000. Again, like I said earlier, whether that occurs in fiscal year 25 or fiscal year 26, to be determined at a later date. But again, round numbers, 670,000 is what we're kind of looking to be able to lock in with this refinancing, again, market willing. The last page is just a timeline. So again, we're here tonight giving you all kind of the introduction to the financing plan. We would ultimately be looking for your authorization for the financing team to proceed. All that is the informal nod for us and Raymond James and your bond counsel to start working on the documents that we need to ultimately go and enter the market at the most opportune time. Assuming that happens and you give us the authorization to proceed this evening, we or some portion of the financing team would be back on your meeting on the 19th. That's when the parameters resolution would be in front of you for your consideration, assuming you adopt and pass the parameters resolution. We are looking at kind of mid-October, so tentatively the week of October 14th to lock in the interest rates and by extension lock in your savings. And then about a month later, say mid-November, would be the settlement date of the bonds. So that's when the old bonds would actually be refunded and your new bonds, you'd start paying on your new bonds. I'll stop there, see if there are any questions. Lou, did I miss anything? Any questions? I know I threw a lot at folks.
Just one thing I want to point out, the savings that Gary references is net of any professional fees. So that is the actual bottom line savings that the district would say.
So this may be like a beginner question. So if I were to refinance my house, right? And my monthly payments drop $300 a month. So to me, that's $36,000 a year $3,600 a year that I would get in my budget. When the district does that, does the money, is it like that? They save so much a month, or they get it all in one lump? That's $674,000. Is that all in one lump sum, or you just see that every month over the course of the rest of the term?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the plan, districts, municipalities, issuers are able to structure their savings however they want. So to your point, if the district wanted to, we could take that $670,000 and spread it out over the life of the bond. So let's say that would equate to $30,000 a year over the next 20 years. I'm just making numbers up. Or, and again, this ultimately boils down to what's more meaningful to you and your budget. $30,000 a year for 20 years, or getting kind of a one lump sum upfront payment of $670,000. Typically, unless we're talking millions and millions of dollars, most issuers tend to like the upfront savings simply because they can then take that lump sum and apply it towards projects or apply it towards kind of one-time pay-go, capital expenses, whatever the case might be. But to your point, yes, if we wanted to, we could structure the savings as reoccurring every year over the life of the debt. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and then it kind of leads me to another one.
Sure.
Sorry. So when we get theoretically the $674,000, does that mean then that the payments that we continue to pay are really the same payment then through the life of the loan? We're just taking,
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So all your other payments are going to be, plus or minus $5,000 the same. You're just realizing all those savings today or next year.
We're pulling the savings ahead.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I appreciate that explanation.
Oh, 100%.
That's page 5 on that. That's exactly what we would do if we did nothing.
Yes, sir.
So it was what we would do under the proposed. Okay.
Yep. So that's why really the savings are just hitting 2025 is because we're really able to force almost every dime of the savings into, like I said, either 24, 25 or 25, 26 ultimately.
And that'll be a conversation we can have collectively as a committee, or, we can work with the administrative team to best determine when, what year we best utilize to realize that savings, whether the current year budget, which has already been structured in a way to make our existing debt payments, or do we push that forward to next year to say, okay, as we develop the 25, 26 budget, what are the amount of mills we need for our, real estate tax commitments, and how does that $600,000 affect potential changes in our tax rate? But that would be a conversation we could have.
And I should note that the parameter schedule that's in the back, it's structured to be able to accommodate either or. So that's why we have that in there. It's structured that we can take savings 24, 25 or 25, 26, ultimately up to you all.
The savings, does that have to be applied to capital or can it?
No.
Okay. And you answered my other question. So the 630, whatever it is, 671, that's net of all
Yes,
JP
net
Morgan,
professional fees.
everything.
So,
Do you give us a sense of what those professional fees are and to what extent there's a fee structure that might be less or more given the other
Yeah.
players in the market?
Sure. So,
No, I was going to say the structure, the costs are essentially revolve around bond issuance costs, solicitor fees, other additional legal fees, the price or the fees associated with the finance team to put it out to market. When we have our ratings call with Moody's or S&P, they have a fee associated with essentially issuing that press release and reviewing our financials. Any other?
Accounting fees, right? Agreed upon. You have to get an agreed upon procedure or something.
No, there's no AUP.
Okay.
It's basically more legal documents and the costs associated with those bond issuance costs in terms of filing with the different municipalities and the rating agencies. Garrett, am I missing anything?
yeah, no, I would say, again, knowing that we just did this, a couple months ago, the fees should be virtually in line or almost identical to the transaction we did earlier this year, plus or minus.
And they're largely fixed, it sounds like.
The one variable, I don't know if it's variable, but obviously when you put bonds out to market based on your credit rating, your bonds could get paid at a discount or they could be paid at a premium. Some bonds are so attractive that investors basically fight for your bonds. In the last couple rounds of issuance we had due to our AAA rating, we had premiums issued. We actually received more money on a dollar for dollar basis compared to other issuers out there because we were so attractive. So people were paying a premium to invest in our bonds because of our strong financials, our solid real estate market, our just a lot of our background associated with that AAA rating. So that's something we would also expect to see play into when we go out to market.
So strategically, if we did nothing, we're committed to $244 million, right? And if we do this, we're committed to $243 million with so is there a reason not to do it? Like, what's the general reason that people who are looking at this would say, like, oh, we're just saving money? What's the negative that potentially why we'd have to consider?
You mean, what's the argument against not refinancing your debt?
Correct.
I can't think of a good one, frankly. I mean realistically.
Somebody asks you, why are you saving $600,000?
Right.
And some people, let's say the dollar amount is 50,000. Some people might just say, listen, between us and our administration, again, going through a financing does take time, does take legwork. So some people might say, hey, for $50,000, it's really not worth our time, between how much time it's going to cost our administration, what have you. But, I don't want to speak for you all, but $600,000 is not an insignificant amount of money. So I can't think of a good reason why you.
Well, let me ask a question. Is the potential downside that you miss time, the issuance, and that rates fall further? So I know you want to stay clear of the election. What is the likelihood, though, that there's upside to pushing out the refinancing? And when would the next time we would be able to refinance be?
So again, I think the market is generally pricing at about a 25 basis point cut in September. So the argument would be the market already expects that to happen. So more or less it's already baked into the market. So to your point, the argument might be, and you can argue whether or not it's a good point, is like, oh, if we wait, we might save more. Counter argument is, well, if you wait, you might save less, right? So between PFM and Raymond James, I think we collectively are always of the mindset, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. If we think we can get $600,000 today, and that's real dollars to you all, let's go ahead and do it. And if, a week later rates fall, another 10 basis points and you might have saved a little bit more, well, it's kind of the opportunity cost.
25 basis points, I think, is baked in now currently. So if we miss 75 basis points between here and 4Q, what does that sort of look like? What is the range of possibilities? You say there's a 25% possibility that by 4Q there's a 100 basis point cut. What would be the difference?
4Q this year or next year?
By the end of this year.
Well, yeah, so I think the market has already baked in that by the end of the year, the rates will be cut by either 25 bips, which I think is already baked into the market. Some may say we think it's going to be 50 bips by the end of the year. And you could argue that incremental 25 is not baked in. So, an extra 25 basis points on, this transaction might get you closer to 800,000 of savings. But again, there's no way of knowing that. To your point, or to the broader point, if we adopt the parameters resolution, that gives us flexibility to price whenever. So if, the end of this month, early the next month, we have new information or there's a new perception or consensus in the market, we might call Mark up and say, hey, listen, the market right now is really expecting us to, the Fed to cut rates another 25 basis points. We think it might be advantageous to you to wait a week and see what happens and then maybe enter the market at that point. So we have the flexibility if we want to kind of pump the brakes and see a little bit. But again, it's really ultimately boils down to you all. And, if the savings are meaningful to you, again, we normally take the opinion, or it's our opinion typically, that if the savings are meaningful to you and you're happy with them, let's lock them in. And, if you have to play, Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, we shoulda, coulda, woulda, well, you're at least able to lock in, $600,000 of savings.
And just to Garrett's point, we're not asking the committee to authorize us to lock in tomorrow, right? The lock-in wouldn't be until October. So it gives us a month and a half to, evaluate the market, let the financing team also evaluate the bond market, see where that's heading in that direction. And if we're looking at the Fed meeting in September, if they were to cut a quarter, the market might react to that by saying, all right, we're going to bake in another quarter after that. So we might see the effect of almost a half a bip by the time we even go to market. Now, do we go from a half, 0.5 to 0.75 of a bip between then and there? And that's our risk. That's our opportunity risk right there at 25. That's something that we'll have to work with Garrett as we get closer into that lock-in period in October. That's when, he'll call, we'll have conversations, and we'll try to best strategize where and when to, look to lock in. But I think right now, for the purpose of this conversation, is authorizing the team to get the ball rolling, and then we can talk in October at that finance committee meeting about when do we actually want to, allow them to move to market.
That's all. Thank you.
I would just add maybe two things to the conversation. I think one thing that we've oftentimes discussed here at Colonial is a minimum level of savings for the refunding to proceed. Sometimes the savings haven't been as much on a percentage basis as what Garrett just reviewed with you. So in the past, we've talked at Colonial, I think, about using a 3% level. So if you were refunding a little bit less than $10 million of bonds, 3% savings would be around $300,000 net after costs. And you would say, we're not going to do this transaction unless our savings are in excess of that. I think if you had a feeling that maybe rates might go lower, we could set this target higher, maybe real close to where the savings are right now, and say, we don't want the transaction to proceed. That means all of us would be ready. But if we're not above that target, or you could even set a target higher than where we are now, we may not get there again. It's, it's 50-50 whether interest rates will be higher now. I mean, all the expectations is that the economy's slowing and the Fed's going to start cutting rates, but that could turn on a dime. We don't know that. So I think one thing you could consider is we could set a target, and typically we put that in the parameters. When the board authorizes the transaction to proceed, we just say at a minimum level of savings of $500,000. We're not going to proceed unless it's $500,000 or more. So that's your decision as to where you set that. The only other thing I would mention, just if we're thinking about, well, rates could be lower 6 months from now and maybe we missed it. If we look on page 4 on your debt summary, at the other debt that you have, Garrett showed your bonds that have the red box around. And down at the very bottom, he has a box around the call date of February 15th of 2025. And if you just go one column to the right, you can see you have another bond issue that will be callable 6 months after that. So there's going to be another opportunity depending on where interest rates are. So if we think about maybe hedging our bets a little bit, if you do one refunding sometime this fall, there may be another. Or you could say, let's roll the dice and hope that rates are lower and we do all of those together in 2025 and wait and see. Typically, as Garrett said, when you have savings that are as substantial as these are on a percentage basis, the way we measure that, you would take it at your first opportunity. But we're also in a situation, to your point, that people do think interest rates might be lower come 2025. No guarantees. But the biggest thing is our market really has kind of really factored in the expectation that these rates are going to be lower, or that the Fed's going to be cutting rates. So, I mean, we have seen our interest rates in the municipal bond market come down 50 basis points from several months ago, all in anticipation of those rate cuts. So we think probably most of it's factored in. Garrett threw out a number just to give you an idea. We priced a new money issue last week for a school district that went out 18 years, $30 million of debt going out 18 years, and their fixed rate was a 3.75. So rates are really pretty low already in our market.
Good points.
Can you clarify for me the difference between the debt service requirements and the local effort requirements?
Debt service is the top half, local effort is the bottom half. Local effort factors in the little bit of state aid you get through PlanCon.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of your net number.
Thing.
PlanCon is in moratorium. However, some of your older bonds, so if you're looking at, your series of 2017 that we're looking to refinance, Series A of 2017, Series of 2019, those all have a little bit of reimbursement on those numbers. And specifically, I know it's in small print, so I apologize. Down at the very bottom where it says PE, those are the ones that get PlanCon reimbursement. So some of your older bonds still get some.
All right, so I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you go 2 columns over from the little red box of 2/15/2025, there's another 2/15/2025.
Those bonds currently aren't producing savings.
Okay.
So the interest rates on those are lower than what they currently are today. So we're not looking to include those in this transaction. We're only refunding the bonds that kind of make economic sense to refinance. At some point in the future, again, if we get 1% rate cuts, by this time next year, maybe it makes sense for us to refinance those. But again, as of today and today's rates, doesn't make economic sense.
One other question.
Yeah.
So the 8/15/2025, all the bonds in the next column, is there any cost savings when you do two together versus just doing one and then one 8 months later?
Sure. The answer is yes. So anytime you do a financing, you need to go and get a credit rating. Now, again, the credit rating is largely dictated on the size of the issue, so there's not a whole lot of savings there. But, for example, by doing two financings, for example, your bond counsel gets paid twice, solicitor gets paid twice, frankly, we get paid twice. It's really a balancing act between cost of issuance, paying a little bit more cost of issuance versus opportunity costs and that interest rate risk that you would bake in over the next 6 months.
The earliest we can do that, we're allowed under tax laws, is to close the issue 3 months prior to that call date. So the earliest we would be able to close that one would be May 15th. So that would be meaning earliest we could actually lock in an interest rate would be around April 15th, just in terms of how long you would have to wait until you could combine the two.
And I should note, two transactions aren't necessarily double the cost. It might be,
Right. That's what I was asking.
you might be paying instead of, $100 with each transaction, so $200 total, you might be paying, $160 in total, hypothetically. It's not quite double. Yes, absolutely. Anything else? Any other questions?
The latest we have to make decisions by the end of October, I think is what you're saying, to avoid, we want to stay out of the
The
November.
election. Yeah, so that's the earliest, the kind of the fastest timeline, pedal to the metal timeline. And again, that gets us, as Lou just said, we're allowed to settle 90 days before the call date. So that gets us to that 90 day before 2/15/25. Yep. Yep. So that's the earliest, like I said, pedal to the metal. We can always move slower, but again, that gets you to that 90-day mark.
Thanks, Garrett, appreciate it. Lou, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
With the committee's approval then, we'd like to move this forward. Seeing a lot of nodding heads. All in agreement?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a policy. This is policy 612. We are doing some housekeeping on our business office policies. This policy relates to purchases not budgeted. The intent is to have the first reading at the September 19th, 2024 board meeting with the second reading and adoption in October of 2024. Essentially what this policy does is that it allows for the administration to transfer funds in between line items when there are expenditures that go over budget. If the committee is familiar with it, every month we submit to you what's called a budget transfer report. We move money from one column, let's say for supplies, and we put it into an equipment account. That allows us then to fund that line item and pay for an expenditure that is being charged at ASN. Most of the time our transfers go between, like I said, supplies and equipment because maybe the cost might be different, and if it goes over $5,000, it's technically a piece of equipment in terms of our capital threshold, as opposed to a supply which is under $5,000. Again, this is more of a housekeeping, but it's basically documenting the fact that the administration performs transfers between object codes within the budget on a monthly basis, and then that is reviewed by the board every month in terms of our budget transfer report. Again, this is more of a housekeeping item, but just if the committee would like to review that, like I said, it'll be on first read in the September board meeting. Okay. Next on the agenda is our 2024-25 budget comparisons with prior year. This is our first look at the 24-25 budget to actual in comparison to the prior year for the month of August. We are working through our adjustments for the 23-24 year, but we wanted to take a look at our 24-25 year. If the committee is familiar again with our usual first page summary, local revenues are coming in very strong at 57.04%, while prior year was 59.9% of budget, effectuating a $74.1 million in local revenue last year. There is a small decrease in local revenue. And that is due to the fact that our discount period that we allow taxpayers to pay their bills runs through 8/31. But because 8/31 was on a Saturday, Monday is a holiday, we are required to accept any tax bills that are postmarked on Tuesday. So because Tuesday is on September 3rd, which is today, we had a large deposit of almost $18 million. So it's a timing between August 31st and today. Most of the time in prior year, I'm sorry, not most of the time, but in prior year, the 31st was on a Wednesday, so we had a clean cutoff. Again, local revenues only decreased because of that timing of the tax deposits, which a lot of local residents came and they postmarked it on the 3rd as opposed to the 31st, which would have been last week. So that was the decrease in our local revenue. State revenue is consistent, as well as federal revenue from a budget to actual standpoint. In terms of expenditures, we are in the process of processing the first 4 payrolls associated with the 24-25 school year. They are in line. You can see at 3.16% of budget compared to 2.99 of last year, very materially in line. Benefits, 3.14% of budget compared to 3.03% of budget of prior year. So salary and wages, both line items in line and within expectations of our budget for the 24-25 school year. Professional services, you can see, are down a little bit, $379,000 compared to last year's $532,000. Every year, the school district, along with other school districts in Montgomery County, they enter into what's called a cost-sharing plan with the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit. This intermediate provides services for professional development, special education, pupil services, as well as transportation. In prior year, we cut the check in August, and this year we cut it on September 1st. So it's a timing of just that payment. I expect that to flatten out when we look at next few months. Some of the other line items on there are property services coming in at 24% compared to roughly 23.89% of last year. Again, very consistent. The one material line item that's a little bit higher this year is our supplies. You can see it's north of about $3 million compared to last year's $2.2 million. This is due to payment on our Chromebooks. In prior year, we paid roughly $600,000 in Chromebook invoices in October of 24. This year, we were able to get the Chromebooks in early. We were able to get them mapped and through Drew Bogley's team with the cases. So obviously, the invoice just came due a little bit sooner. That's causing the uptick in our supplies. Overall,
we don't capitalize those, or each
No.
item has to be over 5.
when we look at a Chromebook, each individual Chromebook on an average between elementary and secondary is about $475 for the book itself, another $50 for the cases, $30 for the warranty, and then this software is another $30 license. Long story short, no, we don't capitalize Chromebooks. Again, it's a very short life, and the potential for them to potentially be turned over due to damage, wear and tear. I'm not looking to capitalize Chromebooks at this level, and the administration regulations dictate $5,000 on an individual student.
Oh, individual item. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
So, and then that's something we worked with our auditors with over the last couple of years to really fine tune that. When we look further down, you can see equipment ticked up a little bit in comparison to prior year. Well, not a big number, but this is due to purchasing some new floor equipment, which Mr. Lally can show you pictures of during his presentation. We bought some new scrubbers, some new floor burnishers. These allow his team to go through the buildings in the summer and really do a real clean job on the hallways and the areas in the school district. Again, overall, we're sitting at 85.03% in revenues over expenses, a little bit down compared to prior years, 86.66. But again, because of that difference in the tax stamps on September 3rd for the discount period as opposed to prior years, August 31st, I expect everything to flatten out when we look at local revenues going forward. Again, the additional slides on the presentation, the committee should be familiar with, and on page 2, when we look at current real estate taxes, again, there's that $1.2 million, which I expect to flatten out over the next month. All other revenues are coming in line. Our state revenues, again, we did receive some of our first payments for our subsidies. Our Act 1 index or our Act 55 income taxes is in line with prior years. Interest revenue, as the PFM team already alluded to, we are experiencing a little bit of a decrease in our tax rates. Prior year, in our interest income yields, our yields last year were about 5.4, 5.5. We're seeing a little bit north of 5.1. So we're seeing a little bit of effect of the downward turn in the interest income, but we will remain aggressive with our depositories to make sure we're always getting the best yield. And then you can see overall, we're down about $800,000, but again, most of that is attributable to that real estate tax revenue. As we look further down, you can see these are just additional graphics with additional notes that we discussed, talking about the payment of the MCIU cost plan, the floor scrubbers, and the other additional item in there when we look at supplies is teacher desktops. We have what's called a 5-year capital schedule for technology, just like we do with our facilities, in which we look to turn over teacher desktops. We want to make sure that they're using the newest and best equipment. The desktops were about 7 or 8 years old, and it was time for an investment in that. Those were budgeted dollars that the board approved in connection with the 24-25 budget, so those are in line with expenditures. It just, we happen to turn them over this year and obviously not in prior year. So that's why also supplies is up. And then when we look down, we talk about expenses by function. Again, this is where we want to make sure that our instructional numbers are higher, and you can see that we're coming in at 31.6% of instructional expenses. If the committee is familiar or recall, usually we're in that high 50 number, but in August every year we make our debt service payment as our first round of interest payments, which is why our other use of funds in the 5,000 object is so much higher at 27%. Obviously, we don't pay that expenditure every month. So as we move towards September, October, November, December, the dollars flow to the instructional, and we're not spending any more money on our debt payments. So I expect that to, curve back up to our 50, almost 60% instructional basis. Any questions on the 24-25 budget presentation? I know it's only the first 2 months, but we're really starting to get into everything now.
So last year or 2 years ago, our leaser of the Chromebooks failed to come through.
Yeah.
We ended up purchasing them and leasing them to the district from ourselves.
Yeah.
Have we continued that, or how does that impact the budget on the Chromebooks going forward?
Yep. So that is actually discontinued by PDE. PDE came out with guidance last year and said that Chromebooks are not allowed to be purchased through your capital reserve.
Gotcha.
So if the board recalls, 2 years ago, we did finance what was called an internal lease. The capital reserve made the purchase. The general fund was then reimbursed them on an annual basis with an implied percentage in there, I think, of like 3.5%. To your point, yes, there was that vendor that did back out of our deal in the 23rd hour, which is why we turned it over to the capital reserve. Going forward, though, that has now been ruled upon by PDE, because I think so many districts were using that as a way to do creative financing that they basically came out and said, no more Chromebooks through our Fund 32 capital reserve, which is why that was not introduced to the committee this year. We did reach out to different leasing companies, and they were north of 9-10% interest rate on an annual basis. And at that point, that's not something I wanted to even entertain. I didn't want to bring it to the committee because I knew that would probably be a hard no. So we did actually go back out to market. We did go through a bid process with multiple vendors, worked with Drew Bogley and his team. We worked with the principals. We had different models of Chromebooks bought in. And then we were actually to realize some savings from prior year just based off of that competitive bid process. But no, we did not go through the capital reserve. We're not doing external financing. We bought it outright, but we were still able to realize some savings just from a price point comparison. But if you go out to market now for a car, you're looking at 8-9%. Same thing on technology equipment. That's where the rates are sitting at right now. That might be something we look at going forward. If rates really start to drop, but if it's still in that 7-8-9%, that's not something I really want to entertain.
And then our lease program our warranty program we're doing for the Chromebooks, is that financed by us or is that third party as well?
Yeah, that's third party as well.
Okay.
Yep, it was basically bundled. We went out to market and we said, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for Chromebooks, software, cases, and a warranty program all in one. So it's all with the same company. Yeah.
Back to the previous item, the amendment. Budget over item and switching between them, and how does that work? Because I know every year we have like professional services where we can't really set the rate, or just how many subs you need or how many external services or those. So when those go over, do we have to, as a board, approve each line item going over, or how does that work again as far as overall budget, or is it just as long as you're under the big number? Like, what's the policy versus the practice? Why are we doing that?
So to use your point, as long as we're under that overall global number, from a board standpoint, that's not for that's not for you to administer until it gets to that point. What happens is that each department is assigned their own budget and they work within that budget, and what we challenge them to do is to work within their budget. Now, if they have to move line items, sometimes, we allow them the ability to do that, but that needs to be reviewed by the department supervisor, the financial manager, who's my assistant in my office, and then ultimately me. I get final sign off on all budget transfers. If there is a transfer submitted to me, if it's not clear as day, or if I don't know about it, I'm making phone calls, I'm sending emails out. We have that discussion to say, okay, you're transferring money from object A to object B to pay for this expenditure. And I educate them on saying that you need to realize that down the line, you can't then just go over on the other line item you took the money out of. So I make sure that, we work with them, we have the forecasting, the foresight to say, okay, you're gonna take money from here to pay for this expenditure, that's great, but know that it will have an effect on you down the line. Not until it gets to the point where it becomes, like you said, an expenditure that pushes above and beyond the overall budget, that's when I would bring it to the board. When we're talking, we're talking where there's an insurmountable amount where I would not feel comfortable approving it myself, I would bring it to the committee for review and discussion, and then ultimately, the board for final sign off. But
if the board wants to see any data within any major line item, for instance, like substitute costs over the past 5 years, Mark can provide that at a moment's notice, and you'll see. We budget for it. It doesn't always mean we actually get subs, but we budget for it, and that's all in line with prior history, practice, and also just from what's in our collective bargaining agreements. We have to budget for what folks are eligible to take. We take into account what the history is and come up with a number. And obviously, in that particular example, it's been challenging to get subs for the past 3 to 5 years. So we actually went out in advance of that, and we bring in subs on a daily basis just to have them assigned to the high school, the middle school, and the elementary schools, so they're the first ones used. And we know by November through June that we're going to need at least 3 to 5 at a minimum on a daily basis. So some of those things we can provide. Mark can provide the history on any of those global numbers, so you can see the data.
And to Dr. Christian's point, one of the reports that is issued at every board meeting is a budget transfer report. So every transfer that is submitted, reviewed, and approved, that is on that report. So if the committee or any of the board members want to look at that on a monthly basis, and if there's any questions, obviously feel free to call me. If I don't know it at a moment's jump, then I will get the information to you. But like I said, I am the last line of approval when it comes to budget transfers. And then last item on the agenda is more informational.
I have a question.
Oh, I apologize.
Sorry about that. I was just wondering, as far as like all of the devices, computers, and all those other durable type goods that we have, like, do we recoup any money at the end of life? Like, do we go to like auction or something like that? I don't know. I'll let you.
Yeah, sorry, to cover. At the end of a device's life, and when we deem it to be either obsolete or it's getting to the point where it becomes more of a burden for us to repair it or continue to use it. We work with multiple different vendors out there that actually work with us to recycle these technology, and then we get a certain amount of dollars or a percentage based off of that salvage value. Each piece of equipment has a certain value that they basically offer to us, and then we say yay or nay. Now we do look to sometimes push it down the line. So if our high school students were using it for maybe 3 or 4 years and it's getting beyond the capabilities in which they need, we might repurpose it to the middle school, or we might repurpose it to the elementary school. And we look to try to squeeze as much as we can out of it, not till it gets to that point where it either becomes a benefit analysis or it becomes too much of a cost for us to repair it. But yeah, to your point, once it reaches that end of life cycle, we will work with technology recycling companies, and we'll get a certain dollar value for a salvage.
And what kind of threshold do you put on that? Is that like 30? Like, I'm just saying, like, costs too much to keep repairing. Is it like 30%, 40% of the?
It depends on the actual item. I know that, and I can get you more information on. I know we have a rubric that we go to in terms of like either if it's a desktop, or if it's some of our like 3D graphic or even our 3D printers, I can get you more information. I just don't have that.
Probably like 20 to 30%, like
Okay.
that fourth or fifth year,
Mhm.
just because the amount of use that they get. And, you know, we've partnered with Reclamier and a couple other companies where they'll come in. A lot of times they'll say, okay, we'll take a look at everything, and either, like, it's one of three options. A, we'll take it off your hands and you owe us money. B, we take it off your hands and we pay you something. Or C, it's a break even. And it's amazing how many times they originally say, oh, it's a break even. And we're like, well, no, it's not really. You're gonna owe us something. And then we'll use the ones that are in better shape, we will use for parts for, you know, substitute laptops. You know, during COVID when we provided families who needed multiple laptops, we would take some of those older ones and take two older ones and make a good one out of it. And so we get as creative as possible.
Mark, real quick, have you given, I mean, I know this just came down the pike with the bond refinancing, but any thought to taking the savings this year? I don't totally follow how it would work to take the savings next year, but.
So it's either we decrease our payment required this year or we decrease it next year.
Okay. All right.
Essentially, think of it, we have a pot of $600,000.
Yep.
The thing is like a coupon. Do you want to apply the coupon to your payment this year, or do we want to apply it next year? Do you want to spread it out over 3 years? I have given a lot of thought, as I'm starting to compile the budget for 25, 26, I know the magic number is going to be approximately 600,000. What effect does that have on our budget for 25, 26? How does that affect our millage? How does that affect any potential tax increase? Can we harness that savings to fund some of the additional programs, or just maybe balance the budget? I'm going back and forth on it, and I know we'll continue to work with Scott just to see where that lands. I'm sorry, Garrett, where that lands, but that would be a conversation I'm open to having with anybody on the committee, or we can have a workshop to go over the best use of that at any point.
And when would you have to make a decision?
Not until October.
Okay, but like at closing?
Yeah,
Okay.
we could do it the day before we go to price the bonds. Yeah. But obviously, that'll be a factor into, do we realize it this year, or do we realize it next year? Obviously, this year's budget for 24, 25 was set not expecting those savings. So if we were to save it for this, if we were to realize it this year and the budget, comes flat, then essentially it's just $600,000 to the good on our budget. It's a surplus. Or we use it next year to mitigate any potential tax rate increases that, that we're looking at. So, but that'll be something we'll work over the next month or so. And rolling into that is our information item just on the Act 1 index. The committee recalls every year PD establishes what's called the Act 1 index. It's a threshold that school districts cannot exceed unless they want to file for exceptions due to special education costs, debt service costs, and there's 7 other types of exceptions, but those are predominantly the 2 ones that are most used. This is just for informational purposes. This is not an indication of where we are going to land in terms of our tax rate increase, but PD has set the maximum threshold at 4%. This illustration here shows you where it has been set over the last 10 years, anywhere from 1.9% in 2016 to as high as 5.3% last year. The relative tax increases is also in column 3 by the school district. You can see last year was 5.3%. We were at 2.6% last year in terms of a tax increase. Like I said, this is just for illustrative purposes, but this will be a part of the conversation that we will have over the next few months in terms of when we need to look at investing in our millage, we cannot go over 4%. And that'll be the challenge that I have on myself to make sure we balance the budget and work with the administrators to say, this is what we're capped at, this is what we're working with. But again, I just wanted to put this out as this was just published by PDE last week, and this is more food for thought, and then also just to think about as we're going through this budget process for 25, 26. Okay. Mr. Carpenter, that concludes my presentation for tonight.
Are there any public comments on tonight's committee meeting?
Currently not at this time.
All right, seeing none. Any board comments? All right, seeing none. This meeting is adjourned.
Where is it?
Are we doing HR or?
FMT sex.
Okay.
Does the board need a break or keep powering through?
I'm good. It is 6:52, and at this time we will start FMT. Are there any FMT comments?
Currently not this time.
All right. Mr. Lally?
Good evening, everyone. First item on the agenda is just an update again on the CES project. Pretty much informed everyone at the board meeting that things were going well. They continue to go well. Kind of a 2-week look ahead is finishing some concrete pours inside. So where we had dug for plumbing, we're going to finish some concrete pours, and we're hoping that the first floor of the actual district office, which is the gymnasium, will be poured at the end of next week. So as that gets poured, you'll start to see more windows go in place, more walls go up, and we'll start to close in that gymnasium area as we go. There'll still be some areas that'll be elevated a little bit higher that'll have openings because we won't have all the windows and things in time, but most of that, the goal is to get closed up in mid to late November and try and beat the winter or cold temperatures, because we do have the active gymnasium right on the other side. But overall, the project, it really, again, don't want to jinx it. I keep knocking on wood. So far, so good. Timeline, I know we talked prior to summer about schedule. I can tell you we're on schedule. A little bit better, but I don't want to say it. On schedule. Let's just stay with that. We see no obstacles right now. Again, we're looking at something positive right now, but I don't want to jinx it. Which is a good problem for us to have in a renovation, because as anybody that's been through it before knows, a renovation is obviously more difficult than new work, because the unforeseen is what we're looking at when you open up a wall or a floor. And believe me, we found plenty of it over the summer. Again, I can't express from Principal Rock to my colleagues, the work that we got done over the summer was just substantial and critical to not disrupting the educational process in that building. So the progress was great over the summer. So next 2 weeks, you're going to see the final concrete pours going. They're going to continue to do indoor framing down in the classroom area now. You're starting to see door frames set. So they set their door frames. You'll start to see cinder blocks start going up. So the classrooms are all taking form now of where you can kind of see how things are laid out on that first floor. We are talking about the possibility of, how quickly we can get to the second floor, because if you remember, the building admin will move down to the first floor. So a possibility of getting that first floor area down and moving the admin down and then starting some night work on that second floor, again, to get ahead of that is kind of what we're looking at. So that's a good thing when our vision is that far ahead, where we're thinking we can make some more hay in that area and help the schedule even more. So just some possibilities again, and it's a big knock on wood because we still have some things to get into, but a lot of the heavy demolition was done. So optimistic that, we're gonna be in good shape.
I know Joe has given the board plenty of pictures and updates, but if anybody would like to take a walkthrough to see the new security features in the existing building, I know you saw pictures of it, but it's really, I want to stress, security has not been compromised. It's been a high priority, making sure the educational environment is sound and peaceful for our students and teachers. That's not been compromised, but it is messy at times. As the board knows, we can't have our bikers this semester. One in particular is starting a little bit of a petition, which is a great exercise in his civic responsibility. And we'll work on that in the spring.
Are you saying a student or a parent?
Student,
Wow.
related
Okay.
to a parent in this room. But he's been great. And all that said, if any board member wants to walk through first the new security features, we can do that. And then if you want to go through the hard hat area, a little bit, we have to schedule that. And I'd rather do that and try to get everybody at once, even if it had to be on a Saturday morning or something. But we have obviously some extra precautions there. But the work that they've done is coming along very well.
It is worth saying that I think if the board recalls, we did the project through an OSEP, an owner-controlled insurance policy. So we're responsible for it. So every construction meeting that we have, bi-weekly meeting, we have that rep come out, and he has been nothing but rave reviews of our safety, cleanliness of the overall project. So we're doing really well. And he's, we've worked with this gentleman on the middle school project. He's very knowledgeable, very thorough. He does a really good job. And he did a great job, and he's doing another great job here. But that's just something else to throw out, that, a safe work site promotes everything, again, staying on schedule, helping the educational process. We don't need anything. So far, like I said, kind of from bid day on, if you guys remember how tight the bids were, it was like, wow, this is a great bid, and the project's been going right in flow with that bid. So
It's really critical to have the function of a school, though, maintain consistency for the kids. Once you add 850, 900 people to a building, we lost a hallway. We need to make sure we have evacuation routes. We need to make sure that White Marsh Township Fire Marshal's on board, that the township's on board. Joe's had all those people in. Tim's been heavily invested. Rose, obviously, Mike Tolmer. And our faculty's been very flexible. So it has required some adjustment. When they switch classes, they have a certain hallway they need to go to. They have a certain stairwell they need to use. When they go to recess, when they go for fire drills, and all that is, knock on wood, in good shape. But it does require a little bit of patience. It might take an extra minute, but it has not disrupted the educational atmosphere.
Have they had a fire drill yet?
Not yet. We're required to have one per month, and
Okay.
so we'll have one, I'm sure, in the coming. And it's really weird for us because we're not in the building anymore, so we were always so connected. For the past 7.5 years, I hear by 10:30 every morning, I hear kids playing at recess, and now I hear buses go by. So, no, we'll have all the fire drills, everything, and White Marsh Township's been great to deal with.
Do you have to have a fire drill in your little building?
We do not. We can have them if you want us to, but we're not required.
I'm sure safety is the utmost importance, but if it's a building that's not used very often, it'd be nice to know that you guys are familiar with the plan.
it is worth stating that the house itself we did install a system in the house. So if a fire alarm goes off on the first floor, all of them are going to hear it. They're all connected, so they're all chained together. So we did install a system in the house too.
As far as you were asking about who wanted to have the tour, is someone going to send us like a
I'll have
a
Linda send out a survey.
Excuse me, right? Yeah, survey. There you go. Like
Yeah, Lynn and Linda can work together.
Yeah.
Send out, a 2-week window so people can pick some dates, and if we could kind of pick 2 or 3, even if we have to do small groups, that would be great.
I definitely like to walk through.
Yep.
Okay, so if there's no questions on the project, I'm gonna go through at warp speed as fast as I can. If Mark's gonna drive, I'll just try to stand up here and we'll kind of go through summer maintenance and cleaning projects. So if we just go to slide 1, we all seen this act before, right? Students are out, here comes the furniture, everything out into the hallway, game on. Speed hump to our start here because we had to move the district office obviously into our old boardroom. So we started there on day 1 of the kids being out of school. And then you can see we start the fun. So it's detail cleaning, but we start in a lot of our larger areas, but our schedule is revolved around the schools and the programs that they have too. So sometimes we have to get to certain areas last because we run extended school year, and there's different programs in the schools, there's camps and things like that. So you see detail cleaning is where we start to hit. Big pet peeve of mine this year, so hopefully we'll see an improvement, is on all our chrome fixtures and bathrooms and things like that. And you just see the crew again I can see Patrick and Zach and Trish all working in that area doing their detail cleaning. Same with Corey and Mike and Eric, all doing, again, just starting off with normal summer cleaning that, again, we have a great staff. They really do take pride in what they're doing. Nobody's perfect, so I will never try and fool you, but I can't tell you, we are leaps and bounds better than we were when I came here 23 years ago. They really do a good job. Again, you're looking at the same thing with Reggie and Becky and Karen doing the same type of work. Again, just starting that summer cleaning schedule. So then you start to see how we kind of migrate into different areas where we're cleaning areas out, and you're looking at the floors, and now we start floor prep.
So again, you have Trish, you have Eric, you have Eddie, you have Zach, you have all the crew getting the floors ready. And then they go from floor ready to, you can start seeing putting the first coat of wax on to where the floor was just clean. Floor clean, she's putting the first coat of wax on. So here you have clean floor, half wax floor, and then total wax floor. Again, just kind of giving you the idea of the steps that the crew has to take just to get the buildings clean. A lot of pride, obviously, in all the buildings, but making sure that our new middle school stays up to par with the other buildings is definitely a challenge that I think we've met to date. But again, with the new building, still some different challenges for us. We are thankful for some different equipment that allow us to do the cleaning to the level we want it to be done. So the science, when you're looking at before and after pictures, I guess I won't say it, it's tough to see in here, but the science wing, when it was done, was painted in a prison gray. I don't know if we want to say it, but it was a terrible color. So the rest of the building is a white. So we actually changed, and we went through the entire science wing, first floor, second floor. Not only did we repaint the entire floor to match the rest of the building, we did new coat base on the floor, and you'll see that on some of them we actually painted all the door numbers over that were in the hallway. So the science wing opened in '99. It was started to be constructed in '97. It was somewhere short of a 2-year project right before I got here, and just it was time. It was time to give it a fresh look, and we'd done the renovations in the school, so we thought this was a great project for our crew. Came out well. With that was a capital reserve project. It was the last part of our district that was not on our new King system. So we were able to put that on the King system. So now everything goes to one key for the district. Just again, summer work, right? So you think, we're looking at certain things. We work hand in hand with food service to monitor their equipment and the equipment temperatures. So what food service and Ms. McCoy will do is they'll consolidate a lot of their food to one freezer, and we have alarms on it, but we also have our custodians check them. So it just so happened that this year, checking Plymouth White Marsh's walk-in unit, we noticed that the compressor was bad, so we actually changed the compressor ourselves internally, which is a big step for us in the work that we're taking on ourselves that normally would be subcontracted out. So there was brand new casework installed in an art room down in D5 and at the high school for an additional art class. Backsplashes in the family consumer science room here at the middle school. This large display is in the cafeteria of the middle school. So electric, network, everything that we have to do to get that hung and installed, and work with Drew and his team. We installed over 15 whiteboards at Colonial Elementary School. They use actually a front whiteboard and a rear whiteboard in a lot of the rooms, and we do have the new classrooms coming with that feature because they like to break groups up sometimes into smaller instructions so they can have a group in the back and a group in the front. So we added some whiteboards. You're looking at Plymouth Elementary again. This was the calming room, just where we actually took a regular room, we put pad around the room, and we did some work in there for Plymouth Elementary. You're also looking at the assistant principal's office. When you see that we renovated that assistant principal's office, it's worth noting that you'll see some other slides that come up that we did a waterproofing out at Plymouth Elementary. That carpet and paint was because her office took on water. It wasn't that we just selected her and said we're going to go ahead and do it. So it was something that she was very patient and waited for. This is Ridge Park. So I think you remember Ridge Park. Anyone that recalls, Ridge Park has them kind of triangular rooms, and then there was a door in the middle that opened up and it made it kind of a big rectangle. A lot of those walls, when they move classrooms or we have different issues, we actually soundproof it. So you see we studded out, we put sound attenuating material in, and then we put Homostote on, we install the Weber, so that's the wall when it's done. And now the wall's no longer operable. Most of them don't work anyhow, the motors. They're original with the building. So you're looking at that type of work. We also took a room in the nurse's office and turned it into a guidance suite at Ridge Park. And at Conshohocken Elementary, we took the library and we had the need for another classroom. The library was at one point in time only half of that room, and then it was larger. So it now became another room, so you can see where we closed it off, and you'll have to see how we divided for the HVAC equipment. that was here, and then all the shelving and closets were added by us for the teachers' needs that's gonna be in that room. Again, just a little fun PTO project that we worked on at White Marsh, by getting those backboards, painting those poles, and getting those basketball courts outside. And then we worked again with the brand new playground at Bridge Park. Same thing, half funded by PTO and half funded by the district. So again, another great project. We also got the time to pressure wash some of the playground equipment throughout the district so we could clean it up. And every now and then it's strange when you pressure wash that equipment. It really does look brand new. So again, at Plymouth Elementary, this was a great project. Actually, three young students actually put together a really cute presentation. And Ms. Phillips brought me in, and they went ahead and they actually fundraised for these two pieces of equipment at their playground. So they were installed this summer too. This is some of the masonry work that'll be attached to the waterproofing that I'll show you. That was done at Plymouth Elementary. Again, the things that we don't really see, so you can see like where we replaced some mortar and some brick that was failing over at Plymouth Elementary, and then pressure wash. This is over at PW. Same thing where we saw a corner that was actually falling apart. So you gotta take that part of the brick out, you gotta put the mortar back. But they're all the little things that you have to pick out that if we don't stay on top of them, we're gonna end up with bigger
And we
problems.
did that ourselves? The
Excuse me?
masonry? We did that ourselves, the masonry?
No, we actually had a company work with this,
Okay.
but see, we did the dig out and then they
Okay.
did the final work. So yes, we did the demo work to it and then they did it. So the demo work is pretty self-explanatory and they can tell us how high to go up, so we can do that. So these are the emergency generators that were set at all the schools this summer. That project, I think we talked about the delay in the 52 weeks for the generators to come. So unbeknownst to all of us now, electrical breakers are a hot item that are a lead time. So we have 2 of the 4 breakers in. The other 2 are due in early October. But at this point in time, we need to do a building shutdown. We're gonna wait till winter break. Our current generators are working. We have backup power still, but we're gonna put these online over winter break. Because this way we can do a shutdown, and if there's any shutdown that we're doing that involves technology, again, we don't want to disrupt the educational process. So if we shut down technology and it doesn't come up on a one-day holiday, we're going to hurt the students and teachers the next day. So there was a strip of sidewalk along 3rd Avenue along White Marsh that you can see kind of look like this, where the walkers went, and we replaced that sidewalk there. New cafeteria door at CES. The shed that went to take some of the space that we lost in the gym by taking some of their space. So we did an outdoor shed for basically there's recess material in there and some gym material in there. But that's at CES. We did a lot of pressure washing internally. So the aggregate panels at Plymouth Elementary, I don't know how well that actually shows up. This was before and this is after. You're looking at before and afters. But it's things that, even if you look at 1965 and you look down at the bottom, they're just things that you can overlook real easy that need our attention. Again, we like the partial shots so you can see what the actual stone on the wall looks like versus clean versus what before we touch it.
Wow.
So there are just a lot of before and afters that show that the pressure washing really is necessary. So the same thing we had to do at White Marsh, we were looking at, pressure washing some of these deep stains that are coming off the wall and then working with the roofer to actually seal that coping along the roof. This was the house, again, that we're temporarily using as district office. Pressure washing, tree trimming, Ridge Park, all these trees were looked at that we trim. A lot of the trimming is done by our internal staff. If it gets too high or it's a tree that's no longer living, we will sub it out and we'll have it taken down by a contractor. In the inner courtyard of PE, did some more landscaping work. CE on 3rd Avenue, again, if you look at the trees when you're going down, you can see how they're taking up so much space. And then, so again, tree trimming or lifting the tree. There was a walkway at PW that was really just dirt. We removed it, we put the stone back. I can go on and on. So fun tennis courts. Before Geo textile fabric down, new courts. So worth looking at that, great
Joe,
project.
I have to interrupt you, because I went to a tennis match and we were playing another school all the girls came off the court and said it was the nicest court they've ever played on. They said they got there and they could not believe what like an amazing facility it was. And I don't know if our tennis girls think this, but they said the way the colors are set, that it was throwing them off a little, and this is the other team, throwing them off a little bit because usually the red is the out of bounds. So they asked if we did that on purpose to like confuse the opponents. But they were like, it was, I guess the girls played Blended Mercy, and the girls were like, these were the nicest courts we've ever played on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Again, great project. Our turf crew did all the landscaping in and around the area with the stone. So again, that was all internal work. And it's worth mentioning with the tennis courts, there was all new fencing there too. So it wasn't just the courts. So the football field, I don't know if anybody's got a chance to see the stadium up at the high school. Year before, year after, again, color change there. We talked it through. We thought what we could do was something a little bit different. I haven't heard anything but rave reviews on it. If you go to the next slide, you can see the interior 4-foot fence that was around the stadium was also part of that. So that's all been replaced. And then you can see where, if you look here, we started doing the blacktop work. So the whole entrance of the stadium got redone with blacktop. So again, it was something that was really long overdue. We really wanted to try and do that before graduation, but we couldn't squeeze it in last year. So it was a little bit disappointing, but at least it's done now.
Where does the replacing the stands fall in the 5-year plan?
The bleachers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've identified it. I have numbers. Again, there's nothing structurally wrong with them right now. So they've been evaluated by an structural engineer, and that's always my biggest concern is the safety, and then start there. So as long as they're safe, that's where I think they would move up on our priority. But we're getting no reports back that would tell us they're all minor things when they go ahead and they inspect the bleachers.
Okay.
I had a question, Joe.
Yes.
Just to piggyback off of your question. So, like, as the student body and our population increases, like, say for instance, you get, what your perspective is, but what if we get like a big jump, right? Do they expand stands? Like
So the
bleachers?
stands, do they
Do they
expand?
is there like a kit, like could they add on to an existing structure? Is that like a modular type thing, or is it like you get one shot and pretty much you got to tear them down if you want to add any more?
No, I think you can. I know you can add because when I was here, we added the ADA ramp. So if you go on the home side, that was never there, and that's like a whole addition. So I know you can add to them. I just think it becomes, at what point do you look at going up versus out? Because then you become like an obstructive view.
Mm-hmm.
So you could make them longer. Like you if you get past 20 to 20,
Mm-hmm.
now you're starting to get right obstructed. If I'm at the 15 looking down 100 yards that way.
With that hill,
Yeah,
the cost is in terracing the land
exactly.
more than the
Okay.
bleachers.
Okay.
That's the major cost.
Yeah. So you would probably end up going up,
Right.
as if you had to, But yeah, there is room for growth, but I wouldn't say it's substantial.
Mhm.
Because you got to remember, even on the visitor side, right? So if you're walking in the stadium, visitors to the left, on that side, you have more of a possibility there than you do on the home side.
Okay.
To your point, Dr. Christian. So again, in the schools in White Marsh Elementary, we had abatement and removal of all the corridor carpet, and all new corridor carpet was installed in White Marsh Elementary. There was also a couple classrooms that I think Mr. DJ mentioned that we had done some carpet, that you can see there's a classroom that got new carpet. Conshohocken Elementary, we did the same thing. They got all the corridors, took up all the carpet, and got new carpet through the corridors and through the principal's office also. So this is a project that Dr. Christian and myself with Tim McDonald, we met with the Plymouth Police, and they had some suggestions for Plymouth Elementary and the middle school, some safety things they wanted to do with crosswalks, and their idea is they're going to move the 15-mile-per-hour signs on Plymouth Road because they don't like the location. And they basically came to us, and I don't believe, were you at that meeting, Mark? I apologize if you are. But I think it was around $60,000, Dr. Christian.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation about, they wanted us to basically go halfsies with them. And we had the conversation and talked about what if we purchased some of the material and did some of the work. So this is not paint, this is what we call as a meltdown. So they sell it now, it's like you have to torch the road, you get a sheet of what you're looking for that's the perfect size, and you actually melt it to the road.
Like shrink wrap.
And it lasts longer, it kind of, I guess you could say it's kind of like that. So you actually, and then it adheres to the road, it lasts longer, it won't need to be maintained as much. So that's what they wanted to put down, so we did it. But I can tell you, I think the latest we were in was around $9,000 was our cut of this project. So substantially lower than what we did. And again, addressing some safety things that Dr. Christian, myself, and the police department sat down and thought they were good ideas.
It was a matter of not just the cost, but also timing. Because to go through the process for the township to approve things, state roads, things like that, it might take over a year to get done. They were safety measures we all agreed with. We knew we could supply the labor. We knew we weren't going to be anywhere near the number of their estimates if they let us do the labor piece. And if I said, if you're going to let us on your road, which we have no jurisdiction over, to make the improvements, we'll do it. And it just worked out really well. And if you're coming up from Germantown Pike to Plymouth, anybody who's traveled that way, you would notice that the yellow lights for the 15-mile-an-hour start before you get to the bend and the hill. And the police were sharing with us how people don't realize there's a school around that bend. They see it and they slow down. They're like, there's no school here. And then they gun it up the hill. Well, that's why they wanted to move it, to get it more in line with where the school is so that people slow down. Hopefully, and their Plymouth police are great about being visible in our schools. They were here the first day of the middle school, first day of Plymouth. They're always visible, as are White Marsh and Conshohocken. And they just said, hey, if this can be a more proactive way so we don't have to pull over as many people, then, so those are some of the things we talked about. And we just said, we can't just give you a check, but we can give you the labor. We can provide the labor and work with you to reduce the cost.
I have a question about the materials. I mean, I know we're getting off into the weeds a little bit, but are there any guarantees with that? Like, I don't know how it holds up with the cold and stuff. So did we buy additional so if we need to replace some, or are we gonna have to go back and try to find some if, like, say snow and it chips up or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's where this is. It's really weird. If you go down and you feel it on the ground, you can feel that it's almost, like I said, become like part of the asphalt and
Okay,
blacktop.
so it's kind of melted in.
So when it melts in, the only thing I can tell you, Mr. Winchester, is we used this ourselves about 10, 12 years ago. So when it got brought up in the meeting, I was comfortable that we had the equipment because we started doing arrows and some of the things at PW just to see how they would last. So we took some test areas and did small areas to see how they would act with a plow. Mm-hmm. So give it a turning arrow, give it a lane. So we test drove the actual product and knew that it was good. And I think that's why the police in the township wanted to use it. Because paint is it's continual.
Sure.
You know.
And cars run over it and then drag the paint along.
And then we get that bill for it's on someone's car, right?
Joe, as you wrap up, I'm going to ask Mark to put it on slide 35 for a second. There was a TV show in the 1970s, and I'm showing my age. It was called the Liars Club, where they would have an object and 4 celebrities would pretend that they knew what the object was used for, and the contestants had to guess what it was for. So I want to know, what are those 2 pieces of playground equipment used for?
Does that thing spin?
That's what I was gonna say, like a fidget, like a.
It does.
Like
I don't know
a
if you
spinning.
know.
And
Does it have a
makes
handle?
noise.
Does it crank?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't know what the other one is.
Is the other thing like a
You throw a ball at
vibration
it?
or a
Like
noise?
a drum.
So where there's actually, but the picture doesn't show, is there's kind of, the student's idea was for like special needs children that could go out there and use it. So it kind of tied to some of the things Karen Burke wanted to do. So they make noise. They're not super loud because we wanted to get decibels where the neighbors were. But for a better term, I can tell you, they got crazy names, and I'll get them to you and email them to you. But
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
no, you're fine.
But they're tactile and they're interactive.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm definitely showing my age because several board members do
I-
not know what the Liars Club is.
Well, I can tell you that unfortunately, I know what the Liars Club is.
I never
And that's why I'm not
Jeremy's
gonna
looking
lie
at
to
me
you and
going,
say.
you made that up.
Was Mr. Beast in that, or?
That was kind of the game, like I could say this is a Jeremy,
It's like
and you'd have to
Max
say, is he
Game
telling the truth or
and
not?
Joker's Wild, all the stuff.
Yeah.
You have
To
be
tell the
55.
truth or something like that.
There you go.
Other shows like
Yeah.
that.
Joker's Wild was a good show.
It's all on YouTube.
Joker, Joker, Joker.
Yes, so I don't know, where were we?
We have a quick question on the carpet towards the end. Anytime I see carpet come up, any asbestos issues or anything on the floor, like do we have to remediate that? Do we
We
have to
did.
test for it? Okay.
We did, yep. There was, not in all the areas, Conshohocken, believe it or not, when we did that in 2007, we had remediated the hallway. So Conshohocken didn't have it, White Marsh had more in the hallway. Anytime that we're gonna do it, we're gonna take it out at that time.
Do we do that ourselves, or do you have to outsource? Or
We
like
have to
contract?
outsource.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because, and then you have to have a third party
Test.
air monitoring test when you're done. So, yeah, and then that goes in our hero books and everything gets kept. So we have to have records of the manifest and where they actually dispose it. And yeah, so this is again just, I think we're hitting the end, right, Mark?
Yes.
This is just the guys on the roof. Again, there's a line for filters. You'd be amazed at some of these rooftop filters that they go in because they have pre-filters. I think I showed a similar picture last year, and you see all those filters just going in those units up on the roof. A lot of filters. So they get put in sections, and then you have a pre-filter, then you have the actual filter. So the pre-filter actually takes the outside air with the manufactured air, gets into what we call a mixed air box, and then it gets into the classroom. So, a lot of summer work, but if there are any other questions?
This is kind of off a little bit, but when your crew goes up on a roof of a building, are they often like just one person up there by themselves, or?
We always send them up to the top.
Okay.
We never send anybody up on the roof.
I thought
We've-
you were
I've
asked
had-
to harness the.
No. I just a personal experience that was horrible, but I just want to make sure that they.
Well, believe it or not, we, when I first started here, there was a gentleman that the other people nicknamed Courtyard. And he got the name Courtyard because he went into a courtyard and by himself, and he didn't have his keys, and he locked himself in the courtyard. So, not a really good story, but Courtyard kind of gave everybody the idea that two people should go on a roof, two people
How
should go
long
on a
was he
courtyard.
stranded in there?
Luckily, another custodian found him and he wasn't out there a long time and there was no harm, but it could have been a lot worse to your point. So we usually do two at a time. So if there's like a roof leak, God forbid, and I only have one custodian on at night in a smaller school, we'll wait till the next morning before we can send somebody up because I don't want them to go up by themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, your team, like, this is amazing.
I know,
And
it
we
is a lot.
know, and I think we shouldn't take it for granted, but like, we're in our buildings, we see how fabulous they look all the time. There were some people in PW from another school the other day, and they were raving about like our hallways, you know, the gym, the facilities. So, I mean, that's really a testament to you and to your team and all the work they do to keep everything. I mean, it's top notch. Like, it's
Thank
really,
you. I know
it's a
that we
lot of
as a
work.
group feel like we had a really productive summer.
Yeah.
From our custodial staff, through to the maintenance team, through to the projects that we tried to squeeze in that were outsourced. We felt like summer ended late and then school started early, so we kind of felt like there was the pinch there to get everything done. And we felt like we hit all of our targets, so productive summer.
Yeah. But thank them. I mean, again,
I will.
it's really, I mean, you see other schools and then you see like, I mean, it's amazing to be here in these facilities. I mean, the landscaping outside, like everything is just, it's picture
And believe me, I
Yeah.
constantly tell them how much the board appreciates it and they acknowledge that the work that they do. But with that said, we still have room to get better. I wouldn't be me if I didn't say that, so.
Of all the complaints I hear, facilities are very rarely one of them. Other than people, we both want to use the facilities at the same time.
I don't know, I was taught at a young age, complacency is dangerous, so we'll keep striving to get better.
I do have a question though, only because I've specifically been texted this twice. who is technically responsible for picking the color of the courts and the track?
Technically speaking, we got together with Mr. Bretz, we talked with the architects, and what we basically did is we use I don't do colors. So once the colors got suggested, we went and looked at a couple different schools, and then we went through GKO, and then we asked them, all right, here's what we're thinking. Are we crazy, or does this fit like the mold of our school? Because like, believe it or not, I won't even pick that gray color. That was like facilities 101 to me. Do not pick colors ever, ever, ever. So we usually go to some kind of designer, but then I did want to run it by our athletic director and make sure there was going to be no issues with rules and anything we were going to do there. And again, looked at a couple other schools that had gone with the blue, and we decided it was the way to
Got
go.
several samples, it was a group effort.
That's awesome.
So if the last item is a transportation update by Mr. Dejan.
Yep, thanks, Joe. Just real quick, wanted to give the board an update as we are in the second week of transportation with kindergarten starting this week and our students in the buildings last week and on our buses. This is a quick snapshot. I wanted to show where we were last year compared to where we are this year. You can see that total number of public school students is about 5,763, up from 5,660. So you can see we picked up, a little bit over 100 kids. And with additional kids, you can see additional number of routes. Total number of routes in prior year was 75, and we are now at 81 total routes. That is big buses, mini buses, vans, across not just our fleet, but then also our contracted transportation carrier First Student, as well as 4 other carriers. Of the 81 routes, we have 1 bus driver. Unfortunately, our second bus driver was deployed as part of the National Guard. He will be away for 9 months, so one, we thank him for that, but 2, we'll see him, probably next year, hopefully. And then you can see that last year we had a deficit in drivers compared to routes, which was essentially we were doing double backs. A double back is just a fancy word of saying that we would do a run of elementary kids from White Marsh, we would drop them off and then go back for the next bus load and then drop them off. Happy to report we have no double backs this year.
Yay.
And I knock on wood about that. I am very appreciative of all of our drivers. Myself and Christopher Brown, the Director of Transportation, we went over to the kickoff day for First Student. We said, welcome back to the school year to all the drivers. It was good to see some familiar faces, introduce ourselves to some new ones. Also stress the importance of the fact that the drivers are the first ones the kids see in the morning and the last ones they see at night. And our drivers are great. They are very conscious of not just the safety, but also, making sure all the kids are on the bus even before they even step on. They do a roster check, and then they do a check, at the end of the run to make sure nobody's still on the bus. They're always on the radio if there's issues, so we're very thankful for that. But, I wanted to put this in front of the board to see, the growth not just associated when we talk about the number of kids in the classrooms, but also the number of students on our buses, and we've increased our number of routes from 75 to 81. And I'm thankful to Chris Brown and his team of Sandy, Ann, and Renee for, putting it together. Now, obviously, with the beginning of every school year, we are always fine-tuning. We're always looking to, potentially make sure that we're making the routes as efficient as possible. There were a couple hiccups. Any hiccups we are addressing this week. But all things considered, no double backs, and plenty of subs on the bench at First Student. I believe we have 3 subs ready to go on a moment's notice. And First Student has been great this year with not just their attention to detail, but their level of commitment, especially considering they were awarded the new contract. So we're happy to see the fruits of our labor. By working with them, we've also been reciprocated from First Student. And again, the carriers working with this year are First Student is our primary, and then followed by 4 of our supplementals, First Alt Transportation, the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit, SAG, and Superior Bus Services. So again, just a snapshot. So the committee has some knowledge about where we are, not just growing in the classrooms, but also in terms of our required bus fleets.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
What does it mean by ineligible versus?
So if you live within a mile and a half of the school district, of the school building that you are enrolled in, you are. The expectation is that you are a quote unquote walker. Yeah. So like I said, if you are within a mile and a half, and it is a safe road, it is not a PennDOT designated hazardous road. I have gone out to look at routes to, make determinations with Tim McDonald, our Director of Safety and Security, as well as Christopher Brown. If a road is deemed unsafe, we will provide them transportation. But if it is within a mile and a half and is deemed safe, the expectations and that they are quote unquote ineligible to be offered a bus stop, and the expectations that they then walk to school or they find their own means. But that mile and a half is a PDE measurement. So that's when we talk about ineligible. I can modify that to Walker.
No, that's fine. I just was noticing how it did come down a little bit too, so I didn't know what.
Yeah, and that's going to fluctuate every year, just in proximity where kids are to their
People
families.
graduate, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Quick, well, first of all, my all the parents at my bus stop, my kids' bus stop, are very enthusiastic that we have the same bus driver. So shout out to all the bus drivers out there. Just a quick question. So routes are up like 8%, and ridership is up not as much. Is that just adding flexibility? Given we had some, did First Student have additional?
Yep. So First
capacity?
Student not only came with additional drivers this year, but every year brings different nuances, right? Routes may have to get broken down. We did look at some of the routes that were strained last year, ones that might have been over, a time that we felt, hey, we can look at these and make improvement, right? We don't want to keep the kids on the bus longer than, we feel comfortable with. So what Sandy and Christopher, and with the help of our new hire, and they looked at routes that were constrained and they broke them apart. So instead of one route being an hour and 15, maybe two routes are 30 minutes and 45 minutes, something like that. Yeah. We want to make sure we're getting the kids home as fast as possible. And we're appreciative of First Student and our contractors to work with us to split them up.
Two questions. So on the average, are we 3 to a seat on every seat on the bus?
Yes. And our elementaries are 3 to seat, and secondaries is 2 to a seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question, I don't know if you even know this, how far can a school bus drive, if this is even a rule, with its yellow lights flashing? We've gotten behind a
I don't
bus
want to
that,
speak in turn, but I can get you that information. I'm sure that there is a regulation that mandates that.
every once in a while, we'll be driving, a bus will have its
Think about
yellow
mile
lights.
That was me this morning. There's a bus coming at me, and I'm like, "Are you stopping? Are you stopping? Are you stopping?"
And,
Not this district.
and it was like,
You talk about in terms of when they start turning the yellow.
Yeah, when they
lights
turn-
on and
Thinking
the
that
red
stop
and
sign.
so you're
sign.
thinking, okay, let's slow down and go, well, the bus is like a mile with the yellow lights flashing, and we're just like,
I'm sure there is a,
I think the answer is it depends on the driver.
and if he's doing it a mile out, from my standpoint, I'd rather him do it a mile out than 100 feet out for me.
well,
to
I just didn't know if it was, because, confuses the rest of the drivers on the road, like, what are we supposed to do?
I can get you some information on that, absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Mark, I remember last year with my youngest being in bowling, sometimes for certain sports, there was a shortage of transportation. Is that still the case or now
No.
with these extra drivers?
No, myself and Christopher Brown were, we were in contact with many different transportation carriers this
Okay.
summer. I specifically took an investment in this CMS Middle School, after-school athletics.
Uh-huh.
We worked with First Student, and I don't expect any issues with athletics and after-school activities this year.
Just made a lot of parents happy.
It also helps that the athletics in the middle school are back on campus too.
Yeah.
But we were very proactive about reaching out to not just First Student early, but SIG and Superior and some of the other ones.
Yeah.
It also allowed us to go through a bid process. We
Okay.
basically said, here's the entire fall schedule,
Mm-hmm.
here's the dismissal times, the transport, the dismissal, the pickup, the return, the address, and we were able to, get a little bit of a competitive advantage. So it was twofold. One, we were able to obtain drivers, services, and then stay within our financial budgets.
Good news. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how far in advance do we get the sporting schedules, like the track meets and the baseball games and that kind of stuff?
They usually work a season ahead, if not maybe more than a season and a half, so almost
Okay.
6 months.
Okay.
That'll be the regular season schedule, the ones you know about.
All right.
And then the additions, like the tournaments and things they're invited to, those are add-ons. But we know, like RJ will know the spring schedule now for
Okay.
the suburban one. And then it's just you're adjusting for rain and everything else. the biggest outliers are the non-league schedules, because if a PIAA says you could have 22 competitions and your league schedule gives you 14, you have to go out and find 8 other games because you want to make sure you have a full schedule.
Oh, wow.
And those are just arbitrary numbers that I picked, and then that can impact transportation. So we try to give the bus company everything at once, so we have enough information out there that they can bid on it and get drivers. The more time is better. But there's always a situation.
Just another piece of the moving puzzle.
Yeah, and just like PMEA or athletics or DECA, any of our clubs, Odyssey of the Mind, they qualify for the next round, right? And so then you suddenly have 2 to 3 weeks to get transportation in order, those types of things. So certain things we can sort of anticipate. Traditionally we know TSA goes to multiple levels, so we kind of prepare for that in advance, but others are surprises.
Gotcha. Thanks.
That concludes my transportation update.
And that's the last item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Have there been any new updates? Anything, or questions or anything from?
No comments at this time.
All right, anything from the board?
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I'd like to adjourn.
Pretty sure HR agenda, if we can just keep moving forward, is everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Do you want to do HR agenda?
Yeah. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the HR committee to order. It's September 3rd, 2024. Is there any public comment this evening?
Really none at this time.
All right, seeing none, I will turn this over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Petruno. On tonight's agenda, under new business, there's a policy review for policy number 321, political activities. This particular policy was brought forward to the board, and a first reading took place at the August public board meeting. Recommended suggested changes were made by Mrs. Epstein, and attached to the agenda tonight are those changes. In red listed.
I gave you one copy too. Yeah, but do you need copies? This is just for discussion tonight.
Thank you.
If you remember, the solicitor said that if any changes or suggestions were made after the first read, as long as they were within the spirit of what the overarching policy said, they could be added or deleted. So I put it out to the board, and Chris sent some suggestions, and I think giving a little more detail to what the policy entails. They're from sample policies surrounding districts, including Upper Dublin, Methacton, a couple others. So generally, most of the policies are the same. I think Mrs. Epstein's suggestions just provide a little more detailed guidance. I'm comfortable with them. And so you're not voting on anything tonight, but I just thought it would be good to bring it back up since we would be up for potentially second read later this month.
There's an asterisk at the bottom third. Does that go somewhere?
Oh, that might have been my fault, Chris, or Jeremy, I'm sorry, I may have.
Sorry, like the.
I think the asterisk was just a suggestion you had made, Chris.
Yeah,
It
just
wasn't from
the
another
attire,
district.
the attire of students, like not just distributing campaign literature, but adding attire to students. Was just a suggestion I had, but all the other suggestions came from other policies in the area.
So during off hours, it's okay. An employee can wear political attire to a sporting event because that's off hours, correct?
I'm sorry?
Right, during off hours, it's permitted, if I'm reading that right?
Like if they come to a football game in the
Yeah.
evening.
That's a great question.
That is a great question.
That is an excellent question. I had that once when I worked in Delaware County, where we had a a dance going on, and somebody running for the school board put flyers on all the cars to vote for him for school board, and we went out and interrupted it and asked him to stop. And I wasn't sure I had the authority to do so. I just felt that it was inappropriate and it was taking advantage of a captive audience. And he agreed, and we took all the flyers off and they left. So I'll get some feedback on that, Jeremy. That's an excellent question.
I guess that's one thing versus like Whitemarsh Township Day is different because it's on property.
Right, but they're renting the.
Yeah, it's not like a.
That's definitely different. I'll look up. I would think if it's part of a co-curricular or extracurricular activity, that's an extension of the school
Or like
day,
a
so it
school
would be prohibited.
sanctioned event.
So even
Yeah.
if it's a, say, K to 3 staff member and it's a high school football game, it's
Yeah,
still.
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I would believe it would be prohibited, but I'll get some clarification on that.
Well, but it says during assigned work hours. Right.
Right,
Right,
so,
that's what I'm.
so we'd have to.
So you might wanna be
Yeah,
explicit
Yeah.
about
We'll do clear that up.
extension, discipline.
I can tell you that I met with we met with all the association leaders in our organization, and they all understand, and they've had their own individual meetings with their members to say, hey, this is the overarching policy. Here's the spirit of it, and you need to adhere to it. So, from a district standpoint, while we have individuals and they have every right to have their political beliefs, from an organizational standpoint, a macro standpoint, all the leadership of the associations and the administration are on the same page. If the board would take a look at this and provide some feedback or ask questions, and then what we can do is we can put together a final draft for the reading, for the second reading, and it would become official policy. If there's any hesitation, we can certainly have more discussion at the September board meeting and then do a second reading in October. Will?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
Does this include like, I know it's not just pertaining to attire, but so like if someone, I don't really know how the teacher's stuff works. So like if I buy something for my classroom, if I'm a history teacher and I buy something for my classroom and it happens to be something to talk about civics. And I buy like a poster that happens to have Joe Biden, right?
Mhm.
And I get reimbursed. Like, does this policy pertain to like I have to buy one of both? Or like, am I not able to get reimbursed, or am I not able to have that in the classroom at all? I'm just wondering.
Good question.
How far reaching?
Sure. This policy wouldn't get that specific.
Okay.
But when you would get to administrative regulations and practice, it would.
Okay.
So in our government class, if you walked into Chris Monero's class, or you walked, Bob Slagle retired, but his successor, who teach government and government policy and politics, they have representative material from multiple parties, whether it's the Green Party, Democratic, Republican. When they have guest speakers, they invite all representatives to come in. And the goal is to talk about the political process, not to talk about,
I never got an invitation to that.
not for school board. But Chris and Bob both have had representatives in from state reps, and or candidates who are, whether they're elected or running, and they set ground rules. And so if they're talking about the Electoral College, they just talk about the process. So no, we haven't done it for school boards, so.
Are there like pictures of like Nixon and Kennedy and Eisenhower on the walls? Or?
Oh yeah, and they've had
Well,
they've had mock debates, and to their credit, the social studies department is very attuned to making sure all voices are represented. But they'll have. I think that's where they blend the historical perspective with the politics of it.
So they're expected places. How about if I walk into a chemistry lab?
No,
That wouldn't be acceptable.
no. In fact, I've had discussions with CEA members who have had maybe something that their state or national organization sends out. If it's displayed in class, we've asked them to take it down. And it's been met with, they understand. And it's never, I don't think it's ever been done with malice or forethought. It might be a magnet or something like that you get. And what do? You get a magnet, you throw it on your fridge or your board or whatever. And that's really been a non-issue. But no, if it's not germane, if it's not, Mark, if it's not part of the education in that room, it shouldn't be present.
You know, I think we should think about whether that's, because that's not necessarily covered by the definition of campaigning.
Yeah.
I do really like the definitions being added though, for clarity, but that may not, right, be captured here. One other thought, and I know there was a lot of sensitivity, and again, this looks really so much more comprehensive than last time. For the Hatboro, I guess this line was borrowed from Hatboro Horsham. Is that what that's indicating, the use of students, right?
Yeah.
So, we might want to consider something like the use of students to participate or engage in partisan political materials, including but not limited to writing, addressing, distributing, right? Because by saying there's just calling out writing, addressing, distributing makes it seem as though that's the list of things that's prohibited, and really the use of students to participate or engage in on behalf of in any capacity, including but not limited to kind of.
You make that note, Michelle.
So you wanna widen the scope is what you're saying?
Yeah, because then I could say, well, I'm just having them go door to door. That's not writing, addressing, or distributing, you know,
Makes
so.
sense.
Yeah, we could add that. The
I
board
like that,
agree.
thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
I did have a parent come and ask me in public, what about bumper stickers on teachers' cars?
So that is difficult to regulate.
Because it is considered public property, the parent asked me in a parking lot, and what if they saw, a sticker or something, or, and the person even asked me, what if it was a Confederate flag sticker on a teacher's car?
Very difficult to regulate. I'll talk with our solicitor, but I know in the past I've had difficulty regulating that.
Okay. I figured since we're on the topic,
Yeah.
I'd put it out there.
The general rule of thumb is it disruptive to the educational atmosphere? And I would say with a Confederate flag, absolutely.
Okay.
With somebody that said vote for whomever candidate, I'm not sure that would be disruptive.
On the same level.
Agreed.
Oh, right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does,
Yeah.
totally.
Do we rent any property or we own? I'm just saying ground owned by the school district. Like, do we rent? Lease, sorry, yeah, like we own all the property that's.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine, that's.
We don't rent any property, any
Okay.
outside facility.
First student, at least first
We
student.
own the first student.
Oh, we own a lot, and they lease it.
Yeah. Okay.
We bought that, 5 years ago, 6 years ago?
Yeah, so if we lease like a couple acres somewhere, then we
Yeah.
should expand that.
We don't
but
lease any
I don't
property,
think we need to.
no warehouses,
So we'll we'll talk about engaging students in that last sentence. Any other feedback from the board?
Just the football game thing, whatever.
I'll get some, I'll find out.
Extracurricular activities.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, so what we'll do is put this into another draft. I'll double check with Michelle Mintz from Fox Rothschild and Jeff to make sure the changes are within, don't require another first reading. If they do, I'll let the board know. And if it does, then we'll do first reading in September, second reading in October. And then if it doesn't, we'll do second reading this month.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for the input.
Are other questions about that one before I move to the next? Item 4A is an informational item, simply making you aware that effective August 1, federal regulations pertaining to Title IX have been updated. There have been quite a bit of changes that have been implemented. A board policy being amended and or replaced needs to be put in place. Along with that, we're in the process of reviewing PSBA's policy, proposed policy, but also those surrounding our with our neighboring districts as well, and taking some counsel from our solicitor on that, so that we make sure that we're comfortable with what we're bringing forward. There will be more brought forward. Currently, you have 2 policies in place regulating Title IX. Policy 103.2, which is Title IX non-discrimination based on sex pertaining specifically to students. And policy 104.1, same title, but regulating Title IX as it regards to employees. Those two policies must remain in place because the way that the new federal regulations state, you need to keep any policy in place that goes all the way up until July 31st, and then a new policy that will take place and go into effect that will regulate the changes that go into effect or went into effect as of August 1. So that means that any Title IX claims that we would get that could go back, that predate this August 1 change. For instance, a child comes forward and states that something occurred in June of last school year, and it doesn't necessarily need to be on our grounds, but brings a Title IX claim forward, we have to follow the policy regulations of the ones that exist right now that are in place that are prior to July 31st. If an employee or a student comes to us after August 1 and lets us know something that has happened from that date going forward, then we implement the changes that are regarding the new policies and regulations from August 1. You might recall that Title IX had some pretty significant changes in 2020. Prior to that, it required just that a Title IX administrator was appointed by the board and that person was the sole investigator, decision maker, and determiner of the outcome or discipline that would happen as a result of the Title IX claim or any further action that needed to take place outside of our jurisdiction. And in 2020, it was changed to where you needed a multi-tiered system. And the multi-tiered system required a Title IX officer, a separate investigator, someone else who was the determining factor. It could be another individual and or the board or Dr. Christian that was named as the person who would decide what the outcome was in the investigation. That's the policy that we have in place right now because of the changes that took place in 2020. So we will need to decide going forward, do we want to, with the new regulations, you can have a single person again, or you can have multi-tiered investigation system. I like the multi-tiered investigation system, and certainly the idea that if someone were absent on a day when an incident occurred or got reported, we need to act upon it right away. So it makes good sense. There's specific trainings that have to take place. The new regulations require that all employees are Title IX trained with a specific training. It's a 45-minute training, and we have already put that forth to our employees. That took place last week, first day of school back, and they have until November 27th to complete the training. It's an online training in our vector system, and we do have verification once it's completed that every individual in the district has completed that training. There is, however, a separate training for the multi-tiered investigation system and those that are involved, which would basically be our administrators and our cabinet level members that would then be trained on a much more intricate training. It's a 4-hour training that is required by the new regulations for completion. And we will have to do that very shortly once we determine exactly which way we're gonna go with single or multi-tiered.
Do we have to pay the employees for taking this training?
If it's off hours, our professional employees, we worked it into our professional learning schedule. For our support staff, if it's outside of their regular day, then they have to be paid.
And does that go for PSERS too?
Does that go through PSERS?
It will.
Yeah,
They didn't send any money along with that mandate,
they did not.
None that I'm aware of.
We wanted this on the board's radar because there's more to come with this. So the board adopted a Title IX policy in 2021 as required. And that was when Gerald James was here in Melissa Figueroa Douglas's role as our EIB administrator. And so Gerald left and Melissa became our Title IX, and we've had only a small number of cases. We take them very seriously. We actually, under the old system, did a very thorough job and frankly, we used a multi-tiered approach even when we were only required to have a single investigator. So the new reg from that perspective that requires to choose between a hybrid multi-tiered approach, we're going to take that seriously. The old reg said it had to be a written complaint. Now it can be a verbal one. We treated a verbal one as if it was the complaint. So it just sort of solidified practices that we were already doing. We weren't going to dismiss a claim to say somebody, well, you didn't write it down. If they had a complaint, right? Like, think about it, like we're going to address it. The training piece is critical. We are compliant. We made sure our staff had the training those first few days before the kids were here. And Fox Rothschild gave us that guidance. There is litigation presently in the United States that precludes from the new Title IX regulations being implemented. And there are many districts that have been enjoined from implementing them, including us, Plymouth White Marsh High School and Colonial Middle School. And I can get into the weeds on it far more detail, but that needs to be played out in court. It's in the Midwest right now, and there are thousands of districts named in that. For whatever reason, we'll see how it plays out. But please know that we are compliant. We've provided the training, so staff know. Similar to mandated reporting training, the key is if you hear something related to discrimination, you need to report it. Just like you would if you thought a child's safety was in danger, you need to report it to an administrator. That was our emphasis. We got to hit those key points with everybody. So the nuances of the law and the investigations that have to take place, Michelle and Melissa will work together, but we will use a multi-pronged approach to make sure we cover each other and have backups, because one person can't handle it all. So Michelle will be the point for employees and Melissa for students, but please know building principals will be involved, my office will be involved, Karen Burke's office will be involved. We err on the side of over communicating within our departments and making sure we support kids and employees. But there's more to come on the litigation, so it's pretty interesting to read, that's for sure. I think so right now, if we have a situation at Plymouth or CMS, because we're part of that litigation, we're not part of it, we were named in it along with like 600 other districts along the East Coast. We have to follow the old set of rules. But our old set of rules was more thorough, it was really following the new set of rules, if that makes sense. Thanks, Michelle.
Anyone else? Questions from the public?
Is there a timeline where whatever we develop as a policy has to be approved?
No, not a specific one. The regulations went in, it was passed like August 1st and it was immediate. So like we got the compliancy piece done. The other parts are still up in the air because of the litigation. So the timeline was immediate, and I talked to my colleagues, and most of the districts around us haven't done the compliance part yet. They all have it planned. So I think if you show a good faith effort, it's passed in August and we start school in late August, it's like 800 employees. We're doing it as quickly as we can. And so, but there was also no penalty listed if you didn't get it done. So I think if you show the good faith effort, but we were fortunate we were able to get it in the first 3 days. And you're right, there's with all the different, and all the mandated trainings are really important. Nobody's going to say they're not important. But no, they do not provide any resources to get it done, nor do they provide the time to get it done. But we figure out a way. Appreciate it.
How are the members chosen for the multi-tier team? Do administrators volunteer for it? Are they how are they chosen?
It's building based, and it's sort of like safe to say. We have 6 people assigned to each building,
Mm-hmm.
so that if anybody's has a day off or anything, that if there's a call that gets in, there's a backup person. So we appoint people based upon to make sure we have a diverse group representing our student body.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Males, females, culturally represented.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah. And I sometimes voluntold people, but I don't have to with this administrative team. They
want to.
all step up, yeah. It's such a good team in our buildings. So they all want to be on it, and so
Sure.
they can rotate being the case manager on each one, and we're fortunate we don't have many cases.
I mean, I just, some kids feel more comfortable
Absolutely.
discussing certain things with certain people, that
Yep.
they feel comfortable. So
Just like student assistance programs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure the
Has to be
team
the right fit.
was reflective of that, of
Yep.
our population of students, sure. Okay, thank you for that.
Certainly.
Any other public comment this evening?
Currently not this time.
Any other board comments? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.